fellow chess enthusiasts, I'm Grandmaster Max Illingworth, and in this video, I'll be showing you how to beat the chess computer. Now, the chess computer I was playing in this game is the strongest chess personality on chess.com's computers, and it's known as Hikaru-bot. Now, Hikaru-bot supposedly has a strength of 2700 according to chess.com, which would put it in the top 40 to 50 chess players in the world. But you'll see here that I was able to checkmate Hikaru-bot with the white pieces in just 25 moves. So how did I do it? Well, let's see the game and find out. Now, the first thing you'll notice is that I didn't play my usual openings like e4 or d4 at the start, but I went for something known as an anti-computer strategy. So I played the move g3 and went for an early kingside fianchetto, which actually already takes the computer out of book very early, thus allowing me to be able to exploit its weaknesses more easily than if I just bash out 20 moves of theory. So after d3, d5, we see that the computer has taken over the center. I played the move knight to c3, sort of gambling that the computer would not play d4 and attack my knight. I will admit that if you're playing against Stockfish, well, against the strongest Stockfish engine, it would punish my mistakes quite ruthlessly. But against this somewhat weaker engine, I was able to basically play in a way to optimize so that it would make mistakes against my particular moves, or I'd be able to outplay it using my famed Grandmaster chess understanding. But okay, more serious note, after knight f6, I played the move e4. And you might be wondering, well, why am I not worried about this move d4 in this position? And the answer is that when it comes to computers, and especially the, let's say, not so strong chess computers, I find that they're often quite weak in block positions. And the reason that they're weak in block positions is because, like, if you take a position like this, you know, there's not going to be any immediate tactics in general. It's going to mainly come down to both sides playing for different pawn breaks, and this sort of more strategic component, something where the computer is not able to so easily use its famed tactical ability as such. Well, the computer did not play d4, it played the move e6. And now normally if I was playing this in a game against a fellow human, I would think, okay, what is the way to set the most practical problems and try to play the best move, which happens to be to take and to continue my hypermodern strategy of pinning the knight and putting as much pressure against this d5 pawn of my pieces as possible. But against the computer, I thought instead, what is a move I can play that would prompt the computer to play d4? And so I came up with the move of knight to h3. And admittedly, the one idea of this move is basically to try to provoke d4 and make it look more effective than usual. And indeed, my computer was provoked playing the move d4. And I played the move knight e2, keeping my knight developed, since on b1 it would be a little bit passive. And here's your chance to see if you can actually play better than the computer. Can you find the best move that black should play in this position to try to exploit the funny positioning of my knights? Well, congratulations if you were thinking like Alpha Zero and you came up with the move of h5, where by playing h4 and using the g3 pawn as a hook, it would actually give black the attack against my king. Now, some of you might be beginners watching where, you know, the coach like slapped you on the wrist for saying, you know, don't push your rook's pawns at the start of the game. But it's an exception where we can actually open the h file for the rook, and it's justified because the position is closed, and white has no way to exploit the lead in development he gets from black moving his rook's pawn forward. It's not like one of these things where kind of like grandmasters know when to break the rules, right? But okay, in the game we had bishop to d6, which is not the best move, because after f4, and now after the move e5, which is trying to avoid my own pawn fork with e5 that was threatening to win a piece. Well, then I played the move f5. Again, I managed to completely close the position. And now, I mean, if you're a human, well, I'm assuming there are no computers watching this video, right? But, yeah, I think that very few human players would castle in this position. Because, I mean, I would see, okay, white has a space advantage around the king, and you know, there's this big pawn storm coming for the attack. And I would probably castle long instead of castling short as the long-term plan. But after castles, well, now this walks right into my attack. Where after knight f2, I am ready to support the pawn storm. Again, you can see this very strategic because the attack on black's king is not going to strike for another 5 to 10 moves, so way beyond the engine's horizon. But when it does strike, it's going to be very hard for black to deal with. So in this position here, black played the move bishop to d7. Really he should try to mount some sort of defense with his pieces, but bishop d7 does develop a piece, but it doesn't really help deal with the attack that's coming. And after g4, he tried to stop my idea of playing g5 with h6. This is what Hikaru-bot played. But what's a simple way to build up my attack here as white and keep the pawn storm coming? Yeah, that's right. I have the move h4. It's more effective to play h4 and then g5 rather than playing g5 immediately. And we see the reason in the game that after the move knight h7, it turns out in this position I actually don't really care that much if he takes my pawns on the king side, because doing so will help open up the lines for my rook and my queen and other pieces to enter the attack. And that is why I bravely played the move g5, sacking the pawn. But in return, I open up that h-file if he were to take. Because, I mean, the key to having a successful attack is basically finding the way to get your rooks and your other pieces in the attack, and opening up the files by exchanging pawns is the obvious way to do so. So, black played the move hg5. Admittedly, this was suicidal, he shouldn't have played this, but already the black position was quite difficult anyway. But anyway, he decided to call my bluff and say, okay, mate, I took your pawn, and where's your compensation? And my compensation is that after the move knight g3, I am already threatening the move queen h5, going for a mating attack on h8. And it turns out moves like f6 don't really succeed in stopping that, because I can still take anyway, and you can see that still my attack is very strong. And while there are no immediate mating threats, the idea is to bring my the knights and the queen in the attack with moves like knight g4, queen h7 and knight h5. I mean, I have way more attackers than black has defenders on the king side. So even without deep calculation, you can basically surmise that white's attack is decisive here. So instead, the Hikaru-bot tried the move g6, trying to stop queen g5, h5 directly. But then after queen g4, this knight is coming under attack. And it's very hard to find a good way to defend the knight, because if you try to retreat the knight with knight h7, I'll simply play the move queen h3, and then I will either checkmate on h7, or if the knight moves away, I will have a checkmate on h8. So now we see the power of the queen and rook battery on the open file. So black tried to defend the knight with bishop to e7. And actually this was a point where I was able to improve on a game I had played previously, where previously I had sort of choked and thought, I was like got a bit scared that the computer had worked out some sort of defense that I hadn't thought of. Like, it's an important psychological point when playing computer. I see a lot of players kind of psych themselves out and think, oh, this computer is so strong, I'm never going to beat the, invincible, mighty chess machine. But actually the computers do have weaknesses as well. And as we've seen here, there are ways to play to our strengths. So having great self-confidence is very important for being a computer. You have to generally believe you can beat the machine in order to beat it. So at this point, I thought to myself, well, okay, how can I bring more pieces into the attack? I mean, you've probably seen that queen h4 doesn't work in this version because he has a check of knight f3, discovering the attack on my queen. Of course, my king is in check, so I don't have time to play queen h8 checkmate. So I kind of used a bit of logical thinking and thought, well, okay, what's a move I can play that turns queen h4 into a checkmating threat? And the answer is to move king e2, because now if he plays some pass move like b5, we can see it now after queen h4 that knight f3 does not come with a check, and therefore white will be able to deliver checkmate on h8 from here, like we saw before. For this reason, the computer came up with the move king g7, hoping that if I were to move the queen, that black would be able to defend with the rook now. These clear the way for the queen to defend the rook. However, I'm able to bring more pieces in attack forcefully, and here it's important not to be afraid to sacrifice material in order to bring more pieces in attack by force. Those who are already quite advanced chess players might know the games of players like Paul Morphy or Gioacchino Greco, showing the importance of bringing the pieces into the attack quickly before the opponent can mount a defense, to keep the initiative, to keep control of the game, kind of like keep throwing punches like a boxer so the opponent doesn't have time to recover. So, as you might have guessed, I played a sacrifice, and I played the move knight to h5. And the problem for black is that he can't really ignore that knight, because, I mean, it's right in his face right now, right? But after g takes h5 and rook h5, the problem is that it's very hard for him to find a good way to defend his knight. For example, like rook h8 doesn't really stop me being able to take that knight, just to explain it for you. you might be thinking after rook h8 that, you know, if white plays bishop g5, that black can play to move rook h5 and try to remove the defender of the bishop. But actually after rook h5 I have the move bishop e7, and that discovered check allows me to win the queen and technically even checkmate the king if you want to get technical. So instead, the computer played f6, trying to hang on to the extra piece by force. The problem with that is that now I have a forced checkmate. And if you want to challenge yourself, you can try to see if you can find this checkmate as well with white to play here. Okay, so congratulations if you played the move bishop g5 and saw that you have a forced mate if black were to take with the f-pawn. But actually we can do even better here, where I played this very beautiful move of rook to h7, sacrificing the rook just to be able to bring my queen into the attack with tempo. Of course, knight takes h7 is not a legal move because of the pin on the knight to the king. But if king g8, I would be able to take. And then if they take, then, you know, I go queen h5 and the threats of queen g6 mate, or even bring the rook in are going to be too much for black to bear at this point. So, Hikaru-bot took the rook, but after queen h5, the rest falls into place. King g8, queen g6, king h8, and now after bishop g5, there is no good defense to rook h1 checkmate. The game concluded with rook f7. After rook f7, I played rook to h1. Just bear with me, there we go. And after rook h7, then I played rook h7 checkmate. And voila, I beat Hikaru-bot in a miniature of 25 moves. Probably there'll be one of you watch saying, oh, you beat Hikaru Nakamura, great work. But no, I beat the bots that was based on Nakamura's style. So not as strong as Nakamura, of course, because, I mean, Nakamura would not fall into the mistakes that the bot did. But still a very nice win that shows you that even the strongest chess.com bots are indeed beatable. And this is true for the bots on other sites like leadchess.org and other sites that you might play chess on, or maybe play against a computer. So if we summarize the 3 key steps I used to beat Hikaru-bot, the first step was that I took it out of its opening book with a somewhat unusual opening, so that I could more easily punish its mistakes early on. The second step is that I aimed for a closed position, where the computer would not understand what was happening, and where I could simply build up a very ready-made attack. And then the third key step was to basically execute this attack, where I was able to bring more pieces in the attack with moves like king e2, the sack of the knight with rook knight h5. I was able to win with a very nice combination to close out the game and win. So, well, congratulations on completing this video and this little Grandmaster chess lesson. Do make sure to show your appreciation by liking this video. And if you want to stay up to date with more of my Grandmaster chess lessons, helping you to become a chess master or chess champion, or maybe even just to improve your chess even a little bit, then make sure to subscribe, and that will keep you up to date with all of my subsequent chess lessons here on this channel. Thanks so much for your support and for your great attention as wonderful chess students and fellow chess lovers, and I will see you in the next video, chess improvers.